Joining us now, former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf on the breaking news. Chad, the Pentagon just now, moments ago, saying none of the hundreds of Americans now left behind terrorist lines in Afghanistan made it to the Kabul airport, that they wanted to leave, but they were not able to evacuate Americans who wanted to leave. That's a quote. They're saying this is heartbreak. Your reaction?
Well, I'd say that the withdrawal that we've seen is absolutely disastrous for Americans there in Kabul, as well as others that need to get out. What we know today is that the Taliban will control more territory, more money, and more weaponry than they did on 9/11, and that's a concern for the homeland. As we look at terrorist threats to the homeland, how they can strike here, and their ability to reach Americans here in the U.S. And so very, very concerning about what's going on over there today.
You know, the president told ABC News on August 19th that if Americans are there, quote, we will stay. But now he's not staying. Instead, he's going to talk tomorrow about why he did not delay the withdrawal. How does he get around this?
Well, I don't know that he does, and I think that that's why the vast majority of Americans do not trust this administration when it comes to national security issues, whether it's overseas in Afghanistan or on our southwest border. And so I think the president's got to be upfront with the American people and explain to him how the war is over in Afghanistan, yet thousands or hundreds and potentially thousands of Americans are still left there. And I think, again, vast majority of Americans will not agree with that proposition that the war is over in Afghanistan until we bring every American home. And that's his duty as the commander-in-chief to fulfill that promise.
Now, the White House and the State Department are saying they tried the best they could, sending out hundreds of cables and text messages, trying to find Americans, trying to get Americans out. Now they're going to do diplomatic efforts with the Taliban to try to get them out, when the Taliban basically has been killing hundreds of U.S. troops over the years, and it basically overtook a duly elected government and overthrew it. So there's that, and there's a lot of action about what is going on with the fear of terrorism hitting our shores. Can you give us an update on that story?
Well, absolutely. Again, what we know is that, again, Afghanistan will now likely become a safe haven for terrorism. And whether it's the Taliban or ISIS-K or other terrorist groups that are going to be able to reconstitute themselves there and eventually reach the United States and to potentially conduct terrorist attacks here. I think that is the concern. Obviously, that was a concern on 9/11, and that's what we've been battling for over 20 years, making sure that that doesn't happen, that these individuals and these bad people remain overseas and they're not attacking here in the homeland. And since we don't have assets, we don't have a State Department, we don't have U.S. assets there in Afghanistan, that's the concern. Not having the intel, not understanding what's going on in Afghanistan as these terrorist groups reconstitute themselves and potentially are a direct threat here in the homeland.
Well, the Texas state legislature is taking matters into its own hands. The Texas House just approved, Texas is basically approving billions of dollars for its own state's border security, including $1 billion for Texas to build its own border wall. That means the other states, California, New Mexico, and Arizona, are going to have to step up their game if they want to do things like spend money on a border wall. Do you think they will?
Well, I hope they do. And it's unfortunately that we go from one national embarrassment in Afghanistan to another national embarrassment on the southwest border that was, again, created in large part by the policies of this administration. And so you see states like Texas trying to do all that they can to secure their border and protect Texans, protect their constituents there in the state of Texas. And Arizona and others are going to have to follow suit, because what we see is that the Biden administration is not implementing immigration and border security law. Instead, they're advertising that it's okay to come to the border. They continue to let hundreds of thousands of folks across that border illegally stay in the U.S. month after month after month. And I said it a month ago that this has become from a national security crisis, it continues to be, to a national embarrassment.
You know, lawsuits are still making their way over the former President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. The Supreme Court said to the Biden administration, you have to reinstate the Remain in Mexico, where asylum seekers have to stay in Mexico while their court cases make their way through the justice system. You know, we've got asylum seekers, final word from Central America, Caribbean, now going through Mexico saying, you got to help us get asylum. Final word on that.
Well, what we know is that about 90% of these individuals will never qualify for asylum. Only about 10% do. So you need to make sure that you root out the fraud in that asylum system, which is exactly what the Migrant Protection Protocols or the Remain in Mexico plan was designed to do. It worked. The court acknowledged it worked, and I hope that the administration institutes it.
We'll see what Mexico does, too. Chad Wolf, thanks for joining us. Come back soon.